Hello, friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. My name is Avery, and you are listening to episode 11, where we are talking about how to stay spiritually strong when life feels like it is falling apart. But real quick, before we get into the episode, if you have not yet left a review for the podcast, I would appreciate it so much, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. This is still a brand new podcast, and it means the world to me if you would leave a review. I would absolutely appreciate it so much. So thank you in advance for taking the time to do that. But I really wanted to talk about spiritual survival, as I'm calling it, because I just felt kind of called to. I feel like this is a topic that a lot of us could maybe use right now. I think there's a lot of people, and there's always somebody going through it, right? We're all always going through it. But I think, I don't know, for whatever reason right now, I just feel like 2025 is a very transformative year. I feel like we're all going through major shifts, major emotional upheaval, and we could all use a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of advice. And if you are somebody like me, which I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, this obviously interests you, but if you're somebody that really is serious about your spiritual walk, your spiritual journey, but you feel like you're going through it and you feel like it's really hard to find a balance between like wanting to stay spiritually grounded and in tune and tapped in, but also feeling like you're just surviving and you're just trying to make it through. I feel like a lot of people are just in that limbo of like, how do I do this? And what I really want this podcast to be is basically taking these spiritual ideas and making them less abstract and breaking them down into really practical, just normal everyday advice of how to be, how to be on that spiritual path, but in a practical sense. So that's what we're going to talk about. I want to discuss this idea of, I think people might feel like when you are on a spiritual walk that they almost think of it like working out, where you can fall off the bandwagon, or you can kind of like fall out of your habits, and that means that you're no longer spiritually aligned, or you're not as tapped in spiritually because you quote unquote fell off the bandwagon. But I really want to be clear about something, and I hope this is encouraging to you. You cannot fall off the bandwagon. You cannot fall off the wagon. You literally are the wagon. Your spiritual walk is a tool. Spirituality is a tool to get you through both the high highs and the low lows of your life. But you can't fall off. That would be like, a piece of your soul falling away from you. It just doesn't work that way. It can't happen. So I think a lot of us view spirituality as something that we're doing or we're not doing. But at its core, your spirit is who you are. And so you're always tapped in. You might not be as focused on it, but it's always there. You can't mess it up. You can't fall off. It's kind of like you're the wagon, and the wagon's always moving, right? You're always going. It's just a matter of, is maybe you pause the wagon and you're looking over at something else, and something else has your attention right now, or maybe you're really focused on the wagon itself and where it's going and where it's headed and where you're driving, but you're never falling off the wagon. It's just a matter of how much attention are you giving to the wagon? How much attention are you giving to your spiritual journey? That's really what you're going to feel in terms of if you're really going to feel tapped in, or if you're really going to feel kind of aloof and maybe more just unorganized and like you just don't have it together, but you're never fully detached from it. It's never gone. So you're going to learn really quickly if you listen to this podcast that my brain thinks in parables. So I turn almost everything into a visual example because that is how my brain works. So today it's a wagon, tomorrow it's going to be something else, but I hope that is helpful for you. So I just want to make that really clear. Also, a lot of what we're going to talk about today, because I'm coming at this episode from a perspective of thinking of where you might be as a person, what might be going on in your life. So I'm going to use an avatar, okay? Let's say Julie is our avatar, and Julie has just lost her job. She just got fired, And on top of that, her boyfriend broke up with her, or she just separated from her life partner, and she's got to move out of the home she was living in. And she feels like everything in her life is going wrong. She feels unloved, unwanted, cast aside, overwhelmed. She doesn't know which way to turn. Okay. I'm going to use Julie throughout this episode as an example of a person. And I want you to apply your life situation to this podcast. And while you're listening, I really want you to think about what we're talking about and see how it applies to your specific situations. And I wish I could go into more detail personally, but for now we're going to have to say Julie is our example. And we're going to use her situation in terms of somebody whose life is falling apart and how Julie can remain spiritually strong and feel like she is held, feel like she is empowered when everything around her is falling apart. And so that's going to include us also talking about how to process emotions and why that matters and how that plays out in our life and what that looks like practically and all of those things, okay? Because I think it's really important to note that when we talk about processing emotions, that's going to be a big part of our spiritual journey because we're always learning lessons, right? And we learn lessons primarily here on earth as humans. We primarily learn lessons through our emotions. That is how we learn because I don't know why, because we're stubborn and that is just how we do things here. It's really difficult for us to learn lessons without emotions that kind of point us in different directions. But the thing is, when we think about processing emotions, a lot of times we think of that as this concept, this abstract concept where, oh yeah, processing emotions, that's something that just kind of happens in the background or just kind of happens when I'm not really thinking about it. And I don't want you to think of it that way. I want you to think of processing emotions like a task that you need to focus on. It does sometimes happen in the background. It does sometimes happen when you're not intentionally focusing on it, but it will go way faster and way smoother if you think of processing your emotions as a task on your to-do list of I'm going to set out time to think about this, to focus on it, and to process my emotions. And you will be shocked at how much that practice will push you forward in life, will make you feel empowered, will help you to process and let go of things, and therefore move on to the next step or the next phase or whatever in your life. So after you listen to this episode, I quite literally want you to go to your calendar and I want you to pick a day, either a day or a weekend or however much time you can give it. I want you to pick a time and I want you to write processing emotions or a self-care day or whatever with the intention of literally sitting and processing your emotions. And we're going to talk about the practical ways of how that looks, but I want you to put it on the calendar because I want you to stop thinking about it as an abstract concept and I want you to start thinking about it as something that you actually give your focus and energy to. Because if you only think that processing your emotions is something that happens kind of in the background, then you're again, here we go with the parables, guys. I'm telling you, it's like you're a pot of boiling water, right? You're kind of you have all of these unprocessed emotions inside of your body, but you have a lid. Not looking directly at and purposefully processing your emotions is kind of like you're taking the lid of the pot and you're just smashing it down and you're just trying really hard to just force the lid down and not pay attention to those emotions until it just doesn't work anymore and all the water is eventually going to spill out, and that's going to look like you having a panic attack or you just having a breakdown, a mental breakdown. You're overwhelmed because you didn't process those emotions and your body still has to let those emotions out. You can only shove them down for so long. Processing your emotions is kind of like taking the lid off of the pot and letting it breathe and letting it kind of come down to a simmer or letting it kind of come all the way down to still water again. You need to process the emotions to let everything kind of settle, or your body is ultimately going to get to a boiling point, pun intended, and it's not going to be pretty. So, okay, with all of these things in mind, I'm basically going to walk through 10 steps of what this looks like practically. So these are all 10 steps. If you write on your calendar, that you're going to take a day or you're going to take a weekend to really process things, because whatever you're going through, if your life is falling apart, I know that your brain wants to go, oh, I need to do things to fix this, right? I need to fix this by doing XYZ. I have to do this. And that might be true. You maybe do need to take action on things, but you also need to process the emotions and process what's happening on the spiritual side, on the emotional side, behind the scenes. And that will mean that when you do go to take physical action in the world, that will be so much clearer. You will have a better clarity, a better understanding. You'll be calmer, you'll feel more focused, and you will just feel more empowered to take those steps. So a lot of people just rush into the doing, and they forget about this whole other side, which is the spiritual side of understanding and acknowledging and focusing on the emotion. Okay? So, step 1 is acknowledging the struggle. Step 1 is quite literally just looking at it. You're looking at the pain. You're looking at the wound. You're going, where am I wounded? Where do I feel like there is emotions that have not been acknowledged, fully acknowledged, or emotions, needs that haven't been met? You cannot move forward if you don't first recognize where you are. Like if you, I'm laughing at myself because I give so many parables, but let's just get used to it. If you are running a marathon and you break your leg and you just try to ignore the fact that you broke your leg or you twisted your ankle, maybe it doesn't have to be so severe, but you injured yourself in some way and you're just like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. I'm just going to keep running. We're just going to keep on going. I can't stop and acknowledge this right now. I have to keep running. I have to do the things. I can't focus on the wound. How well do you think you're going to run that marathon? Versus if you take a minute or two, so let's call it a sprained ankle, maybe a broken leg is a bit severe. If let's say you sprain your ankle, right? If you take a minute and you wrap it up and you support it, you put on a brace, whatever you need to do, and then you continue to run, your body is now supported. You have supported yourself and you have given yourself tools to now finish the rest of the race instead of trying to ignore it and then run the rest of the race on a wound, on a broken leg, on a twisted ankle, whatever. You need to give yourself permission to be honest about all of those feelings that are inside from whatever is going on in your life. So let's go to Julie for a second, right? Our avatar. Julie needs to acknowledge how she is feeling from this situation where, say, her partner broke up with her or something just awful happened and it really made her feel unloved. It made her feel unwanted. It made her feel embarrassed. It really damaged her sense of self-worth, right? She needs to acknowledge it's not about necessarily like blaming the other person, even if they are guilty. It's not necessarily about like, I cannot believe that person did that. What a horrible person they are. It's more about acknowledging, yeah, that person did this to me and this is how I feel about it. It's focusing on how you feel about whatever is going on or whatever has happened in your life. Okay, so let's say she, again, also lost her job. That really made her feel like she didn't offer value, like she was just cast aside. It was hurtful. It makes her feel like, well, what the heck do I have to offer? You know, I feel dumb. I feel whatever it is. Maybe those are really hard feelings to acknowledge, right? Because they don't feel good. But it's so important. You cannot heal a wound that you refuse to look at. You have to look at it. You have to acknowledge that you feel this way. I really feel unloved and I feel embarrassed and I feel cast aside. It doesn't mean these things are true by any means. It just means acknowledge the wound so that you can heal it. Acknowledge that you feel that way so that you can work on building your self-worth. Acknowledge that you feel cast aside so that you can begin to build back your empowerment. And this may take some time, right? So it's not maybe that you just acknowledge it for 5 minutes one day and then it goes away. It will take time. That's why I'm saying you need to literally make time in your calendar, make time in your day to just sit and kind of meditate on these emotions. Like, I want to acknowledge that I have this feeling in my body and I'm just looking at it. I'm just acknowledging that it's there. Your body cannot begin to let go of an emotion if you refuse to acknowledge that it's there. Okay, the second step is basically going back to basics and remembering your deepest purpose and desires. So after you've kind of acknowledged the wounds that are there, kind of going back and thinking to yourself, you know what truly matters? Let me recenter myself and think, what really matters in my life? What is most important to me? Is it that I really, and that can change. It doesn't have to be one thing for the entirety of your life. You know, they can change and evolve with you. But in this moment, and it's really helpful to write these down as well, what do you feel like is your kind of core value that is most important to you? It's like returning to your foundation when everything feels really shaky. What is your reason for doing what you do? Is it that you really want to build self-worth and you're recognizing through a certain experience that you really struggle with self-love and you really want to focus on that, and that is going to be your focus right now? Or maybe it's your relationships. You feel like your whole life you've never really been able to figure this out, and at the core you really want to have or find healthy relationships. But before you can do that, right, you have to have a healthy relationship with yourself. Maybe there's a dream that you really want to achieve, and you're not there yet. You're not even on the platform yet, but that's your thing, and that's what you want to focus on. Just reconnecting with your why, right? Whether it's relationships, whether it's your creativity, a personal achievement, a personal value, and then writing those things down and kind of committing to just reminding yourself what really truly matters to you at the end of the day. So let's go to Julie for a second, right? And I want you to think about your situation and what this looks like for you. For Julie, okay, this might mean remembering that deep down, Julie's always wanted to be a writer. Like, she has a dream of being a writer, but she always kind of pushed it aside because she just had to make ends meet. So she had this corporate job and she didn't love it, but maybe she did feel a sense of like, purpose or felt like she had something to offer through this job. And losing that really made her feel like she no longer had something to offer, or she wasn't up to par for what they wanted, or whatever it is. So for Julie, this is like recognizing that no job, no outside person other than herself gets to define her value as a person. They don't get to define the value of her work, right? Her creativity. She can now come back and focus on what she really wants. Like, what does she really want? One of the things that she really wants is she has a dream of being a writer. And now she can recognize that even though losing this job was painful, now she is freed up to maybe put some creative energy into this dream of hers. Like, maybe she can actually start thinking about writing and what that would look like, and how can she start practicing that? And maybe, maybe she can start a blog, or maybe she can start writing a novel, or whatever it is. She's coming back and recognizing, what, at the end of the day, this corporate job, that was not what was most important to me. That was not one of my core values. So it's okay. Let's say for Julie's relationship, she ultimately, one of her core values is she really wanted to find someone, right, that truly loves and values her for who she is. And maybe she used to think that was her partner, but maybe now she's recognizing, what, clearly that is not my partner. Our values didn't align. That person didn't want to be in a relationship anymore, and that really hurts, and we're going to acknowledge those feelings and whatever happened. But now, ultimately, at her core, she is now free to, one, build up her self-worth, focus on herself, focus on her own value primarily, right? Because you cannot be in a healthy relationship with someone if you don't have a strong sense of self-worth on your own. So now she's freed up to focus on healing and becoming her best self. And then maybe she will be able to meet her soulmate, but she'll also be able to honor herself. And she's recognized now through this bad relationship that her self-worth is damaged. And now she can take the time to build that and to work on loving herself so she can feel whole on her own. Okay, so that's coming back to basics. Okay, step 3 is releasing perfection. This is so big in spirituality. Spirituality, your spiritual journey, your spiritual walk is not about perfection. It's not about getting everything right. All it is about your connection with spirit, with God, with your soul. It doesn't even have to look like one thing. Whatever it looks like for you, there is no such thing as a perfect walk. There's also no such thing as messing it up. You can't mess it up, and it can't be perfect, because that's just not how this works. Your spiritual journey is like a lifestyle. There is no such thing as a good day or a bad day, because again, it's like you can't fall off the wagon. You are the wagon. That's not a thing. You can't fall off. You can't mess it up. It just is what it is. Every day it's going to look a little bit different. Every day you're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, and they're all part of this journey. They're all part of the learning process. So stop feeling bad if you made a goal, or you really wanted to meditate more, but you're not, or you really just feel disconnected from God, from source, from whatever. that is okay. That doesn't mean that you have failed at anything. It doesn't mean you messed up, because you quite literally cannot mess up. Everything, every single piece of the puzzle is part of the journey. It's part of the learning process, right? It's kind of like, again, here we go with another parable. It's kind of like working out, right? If you want to be a healthy individual, moving your body or working out in some way is going to be a lifestyle. It doesn't mean that you go hard every single day. It just means it's going to be a journey, and it's going to be messy, and you're going to sweat, right? You have to sweat to build the muscle. So that's kind of like your spiritual walk, right? You have to get messy. You have to sweat. It's going to be, gross, and it's sometimes going to be hard. But all of that is part of building your spiritual muscle. It's part of strengthening who you are on this spiritual journey. So when you feel guilty, or when you feel bad, or when you feel disconnected, when you feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not being spiritual enough, I want you to remind yourself that possibility doesn't exist. Humans love to make everything like a competition, and we love to kind of check boxes and feel like we're doing good because we did this task and we did this task. But that is not how this works. It's not a competition. You can't fall off the bandwagon. Your path is your path and your path alone, and every single piece of it is part of the process. It's part of the learning. It's part of the growing. Some days that might look like you're doing a deep meditation and you're processing things and you really feel connected. And other days, maybe you just take a deep breath in your car and that's it. And that's totally fine. Both of those days are equally as valid. And just like anything else, remember that every process is not linear, right? It is not a straight shoot upwards from point A to point B. It is a roller coaster. We're going up and down. We're going in circles, and you're still on the ride the whole time. You can't get off. It's just that's how it looks. That's how it looks for everybody. So again, for Julie, right? Apply this to you. Her situation, releasing perfection might look like, well, now she understands that she's allowed to have bad days, and that doesn't mean that she's not healing, right? It means that she is healing. Having the bad days is part of the healing, okay? The mess is part of the process. And recognizing for her, for you, that you're allowed to have bad days, that's a huge win. Just acknowledging that I'm allowed to have a bad day, and the bad day is part of the process. The bad day is part of the healing, releasing that idea of perfection. Okay, similarly, step 4 is surrendering control. So recognize and identify where you are gripping too tightly. Again, if you're human like the rest of us, we have a hard time letting go of control, right? We really want to control the situation. We want it to be neat and tidy and go in a box, and we want to go from here to there, and we want to know what's coming, and we don't want to be surprised, and we want to control everything. But that is not how the game of life works. We don't get that ability. That's not how this is. A huge part of life and a huge part of your spiritual journey is trusting God, trusting the universe, trusting your own soul, that your higher self or God, or however you like to look at it, has a plan. They can see the whole journey from point A to point B, and you get to kind of define maybe how that journey plays out to a certain extent, but you can't jump. You can't jump from point 1 to the finish line. You have to go through the steps, and you get to define kind of how those steps look and maybe how you feel when you're going through the steps, but you can't skip steps. So surrendering control means acknowledging, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid is going to fall apart if you let go of something? And acknowledging that you are allowed to let go, that letting go actually frees up the universe to bring things together for you. That sometimes when you're gripping on too tightly to something, you're actually stopping the universe from being able to put things together in the way they need to be put together so that you can move forward, because you can't see what's in front of you, but the universe can, right? Your higher self can. So sometimes this is like a physical thing. Like sometimes this means, letting somebody else make a decision instead of you trying to control a situation. Or sometimes it's just a mental thing. Like sometimes it's just taking a back seat mentally and thinking, you know what, I'm not going to stress so much about this situation. I'm just going to trust that the universe has my back and it's going to work out and it's going to be fine. Whatever it is for you, Just recognize that you can't control everything. And in fact, trying to control everything will hinder you, not help you. So for Julie, again, this might mean that maybe things don't align for her right away, right? Like she lost her job, she's scrambling, she's panicking, she's trying to control the situation. Maybe this means she just needs to trust that there will be a job that is maybe more aligned to her while she works on, writing and how that plays out for her. Or maybe she feels like, now she just wants to jump back into another relationship. But, the universe knows, her higher self knows that she still has some healing to do and some lessons to learn. So the universe is not going to line her up with that person yet. They're going to allow her to be alone, to feel uncomfortable, and to learn some lessons and to be a more empowered, more whole version of herself, so that one day when she does meet somebody, she's in a much more prepared place to do that, and it'll lead to a healthier relationship. But if she's trying to control the situation and be like, no, I need to meet somebody right now, then if the universe did allow that, maybe that relationship would implode because she wasn't ready. She didn't learn the lesson. She didn't. So just recognizing the universe has your back. Don't try to control everything. Surrender control, whether that is physically, tangibly, or whether that is mentally. Okay, step 5 is trusting your intuition. So this, again, when life is overwhelming, your intuition is your inner compass, right? You are God. God is you. The universe is you, your soul. We are all connected. So many people underestimate their own intuition, their own knowledge, their own ability to make guided decisions, myself included. And we look outward and we think, gosh, I just need somebody else to tell me what to do. I just need somebody to tell me what to do in this situation. And that can be helpful. And I still struggle with this. But it is so valuable. Your intuition has inherent value in itself. And it is truly a belief of mine that part of our goal here of being on the planet, of being human, is learning to trust ourselves, tapping into our intuition, tapping into the God inside of us, the spirit inside of us, to help us understand what the next steps are, or just what we need. You feel intuitively that you have some emotional blockages that you need to work on, or you feel intuitively that this person isn't right for you, and that's your spiritual nudge. You feel intuitively that maybe you need to move somewhere, or you need to leave your job, or whatever it is. It could be intuitively that you need to eat more vitamin C. Like, it doesn't have to be life altering, but just knowing that you always have an inner compass. You have an inner compass that's always on. It's never off. So there's never a time when you cannot tap in. Sometimes we feel disconnected and it's hard to hear and it's hard to tap in, and I get that. But practicing connecting with your intuition will strengthen that bond and will strengthen your ability to be able to hear the messages. So again, apply it to your situation. For Julie, for our avatar, maybe this means she needs to trust her intuitive nudges. If she feels like she needs to move, because maybe there's a job in another city that, spirit wants to align for her, but she needs to move before she can get it. Maybe there's like a book deal in her future, but she needs to be in this new city. Maybe she has an intuitive nudge of a story that she needs to write down, or a story idea that she needs to share with someone. And it turns out that someone, is connected to an opportunity for her, or whatever. Maybe she feels just called to tap into her heart more and meditate, because spirit is encouraging her to tap in and to trust her own guidance and her own intuition, because that's part of her process of building self-worth and self-trust, right? Always follow your intuitive instincts and pay attention when they show up. Don't ignore it. Don't push gut feelings aside. Pay attention to those and follow them when they pop up. Okay, 6 is a really big one. This is emotional and blockage release. So going back to like the pot of boiling water, and we're trying to like hold the lid on, and we have all these emotions that need to come out. Maybe it's because you don't know how to process the emotions, and that's valid. But again, acknowledging the emotion, that's part of it. And remembering that suppressed emotions don't disappear, right? If you suppress an emotion, if you try to ignore it, it's just going to manifest in another way. Like that pot of water, the water is going to sneak out under the lid. You can't hold it in. It's going to come out in anxiety. It's going to come out in fatigue. It's going to come out in maybe chronic illness, right? It's going to come out and manifest in some way. I've talked about this in other episodes, but every single body or physical ailment that you have also has an energetic connection. Like everything, every sickness you've ever had, every chronic illness, every little ache and pain, every headache also has an emotional precursor. Everything is connected. So if you ignore these emotions and you don't process them, or things are blocked, that will manifest in your body as well. So the parable for this example is going to be like you're a salt shaker, okay? I want you to think of yourself as a salt shaker, and all the salt in the shaker is all of these yucky emotions that are unprocessed, or blocks of emotion, block chakras in your body that need to be let out. You're not going to shake all of the salt out in one sitting. That would take forever. It's overwhelming. It's tiring. That's too much. You're going to shake out a little bit at a time. You're going to shake out a little bit one day. You're going to shake out a little bit another day. You're going to do it this way. You're going to do it that way, until eventually all that energy is free flowing again, and you feel more whole, and you feel like you've processed the emotions. So practically, what does that look like? How do you process emotions? Okay? One, acknowledging them, looking at the wound, looking at the emotion. That is processing. Just acknowledging the emotion is the first step in processing it, okay? What do you do in talk therapy? You talk about your emotions. What do you do in multiple kinds of therapy? EDMR or EMDR, whatever that one is. You focus on the emotion while you're doing something else. Like, you have to look at these to process them. So journaling about, how you feel. This is what happened. This is how I feel. I'm really struggling with this emotion, but I want to recognize also that, I am worthy and I do have self-love. Practicing affirmations, positive affirmations. I am worthy. I am loved. I am safe. I am supported. Meditating, whether that's just a straight up meditation where you're just clearing your mind, whether it's a guided meditation, you can find those on YouTube or wherever, that is focused on, say, maybe it's inner child healing, if that's something that comes up for you, or whatever it is. Just meditation in general, always helpful. Breath work. Seeing a Reiki practitioner. I know my sister talked about this in one of our previous episodes, how she was having fertility issues and she felt called. She felt this nudge, right? That she maybe had blocked emotions that were inhibiting her fertility process. And she went and saw a Reiki practitioner who helped her unblock some of these energy blockages. And soon after that, she was able to get pregnant. I'm not saying this is a cure-all for every single person, but for her, she followed her intuitive nudges that led her there, and she felt like that really helped her in that process. So seeing a Reiki practitioner or an energy worker can be a really big help for you if you have a lot of heavy or just strong emotions that you need help working through, energetic blockages. Also, I know this is not the most fun one, but just crying. Crying is your body's way of releasing pent-up emotion. It is a healing process. Is it fun to cry and rage and all of that? No, it's not fun. Is it healing? Absolutely. That's why you feel better after you cry. You cry, you let it all out, and then eventually the tears dry up and you feel a little bit lighter. Doesn't mean you feel better. The problems might still be there, but you feel a little bit lighter because you processed some of those heavy emotions. So give yourself permission to cry. Give yourself permission to scream or to rage. Give yourself permission just to rest or to laugh. Even laughter is also your body's way of letting out an abundance of emotion. Okay, that's a much more fun way of doing it, but all of these things are your body's way of getting a little bit of salt out of the salt shaker and helping process and get emotions out. Okay, so if we're going back to Julie, our avatar, for her, maybe this looks like she's taking a self-care weekend and she's doing a lot of journaling. Maybe she's doing some restorative exercise, like she's walking, she's doing some yoga, or, you can do something more intense if you really feel called to that and you really feel like that helps you. You want to go for a run or whatever. She's moving her body to help process those emotions. Movement in general, whether it's crying, that's a type of movement in this case, or whether it's exercise, that's a little bit of salt out of the shaker each time. Maybe during this weekend, she also saw a Reiki practitioner who helped her unblock some things. And then maybe she did a meditation where she was visualizing all of these negative emotions being pulled out of her body. There's a reason why visualization is so important. You're actually doing energetic work when you are visualizing things. So don't underestimate the power of visualization. So all of those things could be things you could do or whatever feels most aligned for you. All of these are ways to help process and release emotional blockages. Y'all, I talk too damn much. I need to hurry it up. Okay, number 7 is just coming back to the present moment. So if you are living in the past, maybe you're feeling shame or regret, or you're living in the future, you're feeling worry about something, coming back to the present moment and just doing what you need to do right now in this moment without going too much into the future or going too much into the past. Grounding yourself, whether that's going outside barefoot and literally grounding your body, or just focusing on your senses, focusing on breath work, doing a quick body scan, doing affirmations, letting go basically of the pressure to have all of the answers or to figure everything out in the future. Just focus on what you're dealing with right now in this moment. You're not going to, if your life is falling apart, right? Like we're talking about in this episode, you're not going to fix that in a day. This is a process, but you're going to get really overwhelmed if you look back in the past and you focus on all the bad stuff that has happened. You're also going to get really overwhelmed if you look into the future and start panicking about how the heck am I going to survive this and this and this and this? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do what I need to do? Don't go there either. You need to live in the present moment and just focus on what can I do right now in this moment that will be helpful for me? What do I need to process right now in this moment? Okay, so for Julie, this is not worrying about what job she's going to get next that she hasn't found yet. It's not worrying about what her future partner is going to look like. It's not worrying or dwelling on what happened with this breakup and how awful it was and how it was the worst breakup of her whole life or whatever it is. It's just focusing on this moment, acknowledging the hurt that happened, but we're not dwelling on it. We're acknowledging it, and then we're thinking about how can we help ourselves in this moment, what needs to happen. Okay, number 8 is a big one because this is going to matter every day as you go throughout your life, and that is holding your boundaries. When you are going through a hard time and your life is quote unquote falling apart, it is more important than ever to protect your own energy and to recognize where your boundaries need to be. If you are in a season like this, now is not the time to say yes to everything, right? Now is the time to say no, to not people please, to say no to people, to not have guilt about saying no, to say no and understand that that is absolutely necessary and okay, to honor your energy and what you need. So holding your boundaries, and that means both a boundary stopping people from taking too much from you. It's also a boundary to stop you from giving too much to people who don't deserve it or can't or won't be a supportive place for you. So that might mean saying no to someone who's asking something from you that you are just not in a place to give and you need to focus on your own energy. It also means maybe not oversharing with someone who you are hoping will be supportive, but really that person is not going to give you what you need and they cannot be the support that you need. And instead holding the boundary and not sharing with that person to protect your own energy in that sense. So either way it goes, you need to put boundaries in place without guilt, without feeling shameful or like you're doing something wrong. You are absolutely allowed. Not only are you allowed, but you should protect your well-being and protect it as a spiritual practice. And everybody should do this, right? So we have been conditioned in our society that we need to overgive to people or we need to constantly be giving, whether it's you're a mom and you're constantly overgiving to your children, to your family, whether it's at work, you're expected to overgive, more than you should. Or it's the other situation where you feel like you should be able to talk to somebody and have this person be supportive of you, but they're just not, and that feels hurtful in a different way. Hold your boundaries as an act of self-love. It is an act of self-love, an act of self-worth, of self-value to hold your boundaries and protect yourself. And the reason that is okay and you don't need to feel guilty about it is because of the intention behind it. You're not being selfish. It's not selfish to take care of yourself. Your intention is never to hurt other people, but it is always to protect yourself, and that's always okay. Even if somebody else chooses to, or feels hurt by that, if your intention was not to hurt them, it stands. You need to hold your boundaries. A lot of times we let go of our boundaries to avoid conflict, right? So maybe holding our boundaries does create conflict. I understand, and I have been, and I am there as well, but I'm telling you, hold it anyway. Hold it anyway. It's always better to hold the boundary and let somebody else get upset about it, because that's a learning process for them. You teach people when you overextend your boundaries that your boundaries don't exist. Well, now you need to teach people that you do have boundaries and this is where they are, right? And then eventually things will organize, people will organize around you to recognize your boundaries, but you've got to make sure they're in place. Otherwise, no one else will recognize that they're there. You have to set them. You have to set them up. You have to put them there. Okay, number 9 is self-compassion. So again, as you're going through this process, just give yourself compassion, give yourself grace. It's hard. It's difficult. It's a difficult process. And if you're like me, maybe you have really high standards for yourself and you always want to push yourself and you always want to do more, or you expect more of yourself. And why didn't I do this? And why didn't I do that? Speak to yourself like you would a dear friend going through a hard time. Remind yourself that this is a lot. It's a lot to take on. And it's okay to do less when you're going through more. It's okay to step back and not push yourself and not feel like you need to live up to some standard. The standard doesn't exist. We're on a spiritual journey. We're on a roller coaster, right? There is no standard. All of the standards, all of those, it's a human concept. It's a competitive human concept that we make. And it doesn't mean that you have to let go of all your goals. It feels good to have standards sometimes and reach for things that feel really exciting and like you want to accomplish things. But when you are going through a difficult time, that's not the time to try to reach for these lofty goals, right? Now is the time to have compassion, to have love for yourself, talk to yourself like you're a friend, release the inner critic of shame and self-judgment, because those things only deepen your suffering, right? That's only digging into this wound. It's only making it worse. Allow yourself to rest without feeling unproductive, without feeling weak. It's not weak. It's not unproductive to rest. In fact, again, you're making it worse. If you don't allow your body to rest, because also anytime you're working on processing emotions or dealing with difficult things like this, that it actually, we don't give it credit. We don't think of it this way, but that is work. Why do you think you feel so exhausted after an argument? Right? You didn't exercise, but now you're really tired. Emotionally, you did a lot of work and that takes a toll on your body. It's the same thing. If you process an emotion, that takes a toll on your body. It's tiring. It needs to happen. You need to do it. But then after you do it, you need to allow yourself to rest. Okay? So if you're going through a lot, you're processing a lot, you're moving through emotions, you're dealing with stuff, your body's going to be tired. That is not the time to be like a CrossFit star. Okay? You need to allow your body to rest. You need to nourish your body with healing foods. You need to allow yourself to have lazy days and nurture yourself almost like you're sick. If you're going through hell in your life, you need to treat your body like it's sick. Just focus on nourishment and gentleness and love and compassion, okay? Everything that you're doing every day that you get through is enough. That's enough. You don't have to do anything else. Okay, and number 10, finally, is simple daily practices. So all of these things really are simple daily practices, but just remembering that this, again, it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's a lifestyle. Your spiritual walk is not a one and done thing. It is not a, checking boxes every day. It's a little bit at a time. You're eating an elephant a bite at a time. You're shaking the salt shaker, right? One shake at a time every day. I have parables for days, you guys. Okay, so remember that small, consistent actions are more powerful than occasional deep dives. It is more impactful to do a little bit of something every day or every few days or whatever than it is to have one weekend where you do a bunch of stuff and then you never touch it again. It's more impactful to go for a walk every day than it is to run a marathon once in your life, right? Little things matter. Don't underestimate the power of those little tiny practices. So maybe that means adding adding things into your morning ritual, just like deep breathing, or just having a moment of intention before you start your day, or maybe just a moment of acknowledgement, like acknowledging yourself before you start your day, whether that's acknowledging your own self-worth, whether it's acknowledging your relationship with spirit, maybe it's acknowledging the emotions that you need to process. Just whatever it is, taking just a few moments that you work into your day every day to do something impactful it will pay off in a huge way. Now, I'm thinking about it now because I know when you hear this audibly, it's really difficult to kind of take all of this without sitting there with a notepad and kind of remembering. So I'm actually in the show notes, I will leave kind of a short and condensed version of all of these steps. If you want to write them down, if you want to put a note in your phone to kind of like give you a place to go back to just think about the types of actions that you can take, the types of things you can do to take these baby steps, right? To do all these little things. So I'm just going to mention that in case that's helpful. But again, simple daily practices, like maybe you end your day with a short reflection, like you're going to bed at night. While you're brushing your teeth, maybe you just think to yourself like, okay, what went well today? And what felt good? What didn't feel good? What do I want to acknowledge or work on? What do I want to do more of or less of? Whatever it is. And then daily practices can also be, again, stuff that you're more used to thinking of as daily practices, like incorporating movement or exercise, spending more time in nature, getting sunshine, just nourishing your body better, hydrating, having a mindful moment like a meditation in your everyday routine. All of those things, again, are going to add up to a really full, spiritually fulfilling life. So I hope that this spoke to you in some way, shape, or form. I know sometimes I tend to be all over the place. I'm really trying to kind of hone all of these ideas into a more digestible format. So I will put those in the show notes. But again, the really overarching theme here is, again, that your spiritual journey, your spiritual strength is baby steps, and it's also a roller coaster. So it's a roller coaster. It's not a straight line, but it's also one bite at a time, and you can't mess it up. You can't fall off the wagon. It's messy for all of us. It's messy for everybody. And anything that you're doing is helpful, and anything that you're not doing is also part of the process. Not working on your spiritual practice is also part of the process. You can't mess it up. You can't fall off. You're doing great. I just want to remind you that you're doing great and that you're loved and that you're normal and you're human, and we're all going through it, especially in 2025. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I really, honestly, it was healing for me even just to record this episode because I'm going through it just with the rest of you, I promise. So don't forget to leave the podcast a review. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You can also leave comments if you're listening on Spotify. You can also email me, whether you just want to say something or whether you have a question or a topic request. You can email me at daremetoprosper@gmail.com. I love you guys. I will see you in the next episode of Dare Me to Prosper.